One of my more popular videos of recent times was my Jets to Space mission, in which I flew an aircraft to space using no rocket fuel, just jet engines, deploying payload, which then did the orbital insertion, and then the aircraft flew back to the runway. But this wasn't really a true Jets to Orbit mission, since orbital insertion had to be done using Oxidizer. So I thought maybe I should try and rectify things. But rather than just simply go to low Kerb in orbit, let's go all the way to the surface of the Mun with a Kerbal, all without rocket fuel. And by my definition of rocket fuel here is no Oxidizer, just jet fuel and xenon gas. Yes! With only the power of air-breathing engines and the very, very weedy ion engine, we're going to try and get to the surface of the Mun and back again. And it's also going to be a fully reusable mission because the first stage is, of course, this aircraft being constructed here. Now, this is not actually the aircraft you're going to see in the video. I made a bit of a blunder. I built the aircraft but forgot to film it. So when it came to editing, I realized this mistake, and now I'm just rebuilding it again so you can sort of see what construction might have looked like. So there might be subtle differences between the plane you just saw being built and what you're going to see in a second, but it's pretty much the same. It's just things like placement of the air brakes, and I think I added 2 RTGs instead of just the one that was on the real aircraft, but whatever. As you can see, we have transitioned to the vehicle assembly building where I am constructing the craft that's going to get us into low Kerb in orbit and indeed land on the surface of the Mun. We have 3 ion engines that's just going to give us enough thrust-to-weight ratio to circularize. That was the biggest hurdle with designing this craft, really, making sure it had enough thrust-to-weight ratio to circularize before it ended up re-entering the atmosphere because the thrust-to-weight ratio is so appalling on those Dawn engines. So we're just going to use the 3 engines for circularization. They're just the one central engine for the rest of the mission. And now we're going to add it. This is the real craft now, you see, that I forgot to film the construction of. So yeah, I just noticed there was a hinge that was pre-installed that wasn't there in the build time-lapse, and yeah, we only have 1 RTG as well there. But I think that's really where the differences end, I hope. Maybe someone could do a little spot the difference and let me know if I missed anything else in the comment section down below. But hey, while you are down in the comment section below, little like on the video, it's always very much appreciated, as well as subscribing and ringing the bell if you're not already, if you enjoy Kerbal Space Program content. If you don't enjoy Kerbal Space Program content, I mean, congratulations for making it this far into the video, quite frankly, but yeah, maybe don't subscribe in that case. But other than that, hey. So I should mention that the Ion craft is fully stock, and the space plane almost is fully stock. I'm just using the Mark II expansion mod because I kind of consider it basically stock at this point. It's like, pretend Squad made an update a couple of years ago that added these parts. Because, you know, the Mark II spaceplane parts were originally from a mod. It was called Spaceplane Plus, I believe. They were then integrated into stock. I can see that if development continued on KSP1, these parts might have been added either directly or, you know, they would be recreated. Now, I'm going to time warp now to just before dawn. So we're launching at night because I basically want the Dawn-powered spacecraft, the Ion engine is called the Dawn engine, right? We need to be basically facing directly towards the sun when we do our burn, so we can keep our solar panels exposed to as much sunlight as possible. And we are airbound, so yeah, I sort of got cut off by the ignition of those Rapier and Matic engines there. But yes, the Dawn engine is powered both by xenon gas and also electric charge, and they're very electricity hungry. So we've got lots of batteries on board, and we've got lots of solar panels to try and keep those batteries topped up whilst we're doing prolonged burns. Now yes, like I say, we've got the Rapier engines, which you're probably familiar with. We also have the Matic engines, which are basically Mark II size versions of the Rapier engines. Mark II expansion has 2 engines like this. The Matic is the slightly better of the 2. And like the Rapier, it's named after a weapon, sort of. A Matic is a hand axe for digging and chopping, but I guess you could use it as a weapon if you want. And like the Rapier, it's an acronym that in this case stands for Multi-Axis Thrust Toggled Open Cycle Combustion, spelled with a K. But there we are, we have flame out. The reason I'm using the Rapier engines rather than something like the Whiplash is because although these are technically rocket engines, they burn a lot higher and have higher thrust at high altitudes compared to the jet engines, which is why I used them. Maybe there's a Mark II expansion and jet engine that's better for this purpose, but I thought it worked pretty well in this case. Now, as you can see, Jebediah Kerman has launched from the cargo bay. burning right directly towards the sun. So you can see how by launching in the night or just before the morning, we're now perfectly positioned to get those solar panels exposed to as much sunlight as possible. But as you can see from the top right hand readout, our electric charge is still rapidly depleting, and in just a second it's going to hit 0 and our thrust is going to fall off a cliff. There we are. So what we're going to do now is just detach those additional engines, and now by burning just the one ion engine, we have now sufficient solar power that we're not going to deplete our electric charge supply and therefore lose all of our thrust. We just needed that big extra push of thrust right at the beginning just to get ourselves circularized, because you know, this is a very slow, weak engine. I did experiment, see if I could circularize without those 2 side boosters, but it just didn't work. So, yeah, sticking with the whole thing about, trying to get to the moon with just electricity and jet fuel. There we are. So, we're going to end up in a very eccentric orbit. I kind of had to point kind of the wrong direction to make sure our solar panels were getting exposed to as much sunlight as possible. So, yeah, that's why we've got kind of an eccentric orbit. But here we go. Ready? Wait for it. There we are. Our periapsis is above the 70-kilometer line, which therefore means we're in a stable orbit. But what is not in a stable orbit, and in fact has been destroyed, is the aircraft. Yes, sadly, my hope was that, I didn't go in expecting this, but I just hoped it would work out. My hope is that once we've done our circularization burn with the ion craft, I could then switch back to the aircraft and re-enter the atmosphere and fly back to the Kerbal Space Center without doing any quick loading shenanigans. That was the whole idea I had for my jets to space video that I mentioned at the beginning of this one, where the idea was I didn't have to do any quick sale, quick loading. I could circularize with the payload, then switch back to the aircraft before it went into the atmosphere. But the thrust rate ratio of the ion craft is so bad that it just wasn't possible to do that in this case. So we're going to have to do a little bit of a quick save, quick load to go ahead and recover the aircraft. But for now, we will continue on with the more exciting part of this mission, which is Jebediah's Odyssey to the Mun. I guess it really is his Odyssey, right? Because everyone else on the crew died. The aircraft crashed, but we can pretend that didn't happen. So, yeah, we've already done our maneuver plan to get us to the Mun. In fact, we've done the burn, haven't we? So now we're just going to wait for the transition to the Mun sphere of influence. There we are. And then we're going to perform our capture burn. And actually, the thrust rate ratio wasn't too bad on this craft. I was expecting, it's going to be really long burns. But I guess it was made a lot more tolerable by having the better time warp mod installed. So you might have noticed, but when I'm initiating physics time warp during this mission, it's not like for times 1, times 2, times 3, times 4, and that's it. I've actually got up to 20 times time warp under physics time warp when I'm burning with the engines. And that's just thanks to the better time warp mod. It allows you to do things like that. So yeah, big, long ion burns, much more forgiving with this mod installed. So now we're going to do the trickiest part of this mission, which is landing on the Mun with the pitiful thrust to weight ratio of that single Dawn engine. So I'm not going to lie to you guys, there are going to be a couple of stealth quick loads during the descent where I messed things up and crashed and exploded, so I reloaded, and then I've just stitched all the kind of successful components of the descent together to hopefully make a nice smooth single shot showing our descent down to the surface. So there we are. So obviously this lander has a couple of difficulties to it, namely we have no landing legs because I have to keep the weight down to the absolute minimum, but we do have those kind of 4 big batteries placed around the fuselage to kind of give us a more stable landing base. The other tricky thing is there's no ladder, and also Jebediah coming once he disembarks the seat, there's a great real risk that he might just fall face first into one of the solar panel arms and break it, which I really didn't want to have happen. So we're going to have to be very careful when getting Jebediah out of the seat. But now getting to the really critical part of this landing, so we're going to slow things down. Here we go. There we are. We're slowed down to real-time speed, watching that touchdown. And there we are. Little bounce, but otherwise everything is intact. So yeah, I can't retract these solar panels. These solar panels, they can't be retracted. The thing is that they're lighter than the solar panels that can fold away, but the downside is obviously they can't be folded away, if that makes sense. So I'm not really the kind of person that makes a lot of ultra-light, high-efficient vehicles, so I very rarely use the solar panels that can't be folded away, but that's why I'm using them in this case here. And now we can plant our Lowne aerospace flag. Of course, the most important part of any mission. I think we can all agree. Yeah, let's just call it no O2, because no oxidizer was used. I guess oxygen was used, right? Because the oxidizer when in jet plane mode is just the oxygen in the air, right? But no O2 in this case obviously meant oxidizer, which is how I'm defining rocket fuel. Yeah, for the purposes of this video. But let us waste no time at all in getting back to space. The first thing I'm going to do, as you can see, our electric charge isn't quite, well, it's empty now, but it kept on. I wanted to launch with like all 2005 electric charge units, but I couldn't get things to fully recharge, I guess. So we're going to have to just launch at some time during the day, and I think once we're clear of this like crater's rim, we'll have enough exposure to the sun that we'll all be fine. As you can see, as we launch, our electric charge starts depleting. That's why we have so many batteries on board this thing. I very rarely use the ion engine because it's kind of boring, and also it is a very different kind of engine compared to any of the other engines in Kerbal Space Programs. It's kind of a different sort of game, I feel, almost, when using this engine. You might disagree. I mean, if you're used to using the ion engine, it's not, but for me, I don't really use it very often, so it's kind of, I don't know, I like the variance in gameplay that it provides. I think it's one of the most underrated engines in the game as well. When I see people make like those tier lists on Reddit and stuff, the Dawn engine is always very low down. I'm like, the Dawn engine, if used correctly, is extremely powerful. You just have to use it you have to play to its strengths, basically. I actually did a few years ago now, I made a Laythe SSTO that could go from Kerbin to Laythe and back again without refueling and without requiring any gravity assists, because instead of using nuclear engines like most Laythe SSTOs use, it used ion engines and rapiers. And it had an ungodly number of batteries. It had something like 20. It had a stupid amount of batteries. It was something like 15,000 units of electric charge. Actually, I don't know. I've pulled that number out of thin air. But what I'll do is I'll put a card on screen right now and a link to the video in the description if you want to check that out, because I think this is one of my favorite videos. I think that video had a music video tied to it as well. When I do like more kind of what I consider impressive missions, or just missions that I think were like more enjoyable, I have to make a little accompanying music video that always gets copyright struck because I don't use royalty-free music because I'm not expecting the video to get many views. I just wanted to have I make them more for me, really. And I think that one had an associated music video as well. That'll be in that video's description, if I'm remembering correctly. I feel like it did, but I don't quite know. Anyway, didn't really talk about anything on the screen because I figured that it probably was self-explanatory, but we've now reached, well, I was about to say we've reached apoapsis, but we've actually done all that as well, and we've now circularized. So now it's going to be a case of just plotting a course back to Kerbin. Now, some of you might be wondering how I'm actually going to be landing this thing, because, well, we've got the heat shield, but we've got no parachutes. Except we have got parachutes. All Kerbals have got parachutes on their backs. So my plan was that we'd re-enter the atmosphere, and then Jebediah would deploy his parachute, and that would serve as the craft's parachute, and he'd splash down or land on the land or whatever, and all would be good. Unfortunately, I had this weird glitch, or maybe it wasn't a glitch and I was being dumb, but I've never had this issue before, where Jebediah parachute wouldn't deploy when he was sitting in the command seat. I had to make him leave the seat, and I had to just land on his own, which is kind of a shame. But I'm sure, I know this is a thing that you can now, because I know like people have made like aircraft using Kerbals with their parachutes deployed in place of wings sitting on command seats either side of the fuselage. So I'm not quite sure what happened there, if it was a bug or I did something weird. I don't know. But yeah, Jebediah going to have to just bail from his seat and land using his parachute, and we'll have to just send a recovery team to go and get him. But I think that is the final burn of this mission. So we have 227 meters per second of Delta V remaining. So yeah, I quite like it when I have like my Delta V budgets reasonably like accurate to what I actually required. I often end up coming back to Kerbin with like 1,000 meters per second remaining, which I guess is not a bad thing, but it feels like, oh, I kind of over-engineered this thing, didn't I? But, you know, less than 300 meters per second, that's like 300 meters per second, that's like a rounding error. Like, oh, if you don't land in the right spot, that's enough Delta V to change course. Oh, speaking of changing course, wish I could have done that to avoid breaking that solar panel. Not that it really matters, I suppose, because, well, you already hear it now. It's all exploding, but I guess from a realism standpoint, it wouldn't have been ideal to have the ablative heat shield smash through some, glass during the critical phase of re-entry, but it was all fine. Now, we've got this oversized heat shield. I did experiment with this craft with a heat shield of equivalent diameter to the rest of the craft. I can't remember the exact number it is. Is it 0.635 meters or something? I don't know. But it didn't work, basically. Jebediah just overheated and exploded. So that's why I've got that oversized heat shield. And, yeah, doesn't this shot just look ridiculous? It's a very, very safe design, guys. Trust me, it's very, very human. But yeah, we've now passed through the worst of the re-entry. I don't know what I was doing here. I thought maybe if we decouple the heat shield and then deploy our parachute, it's going to work. This was not my first attempt re-entering. Like I said, I did the first pass and Jebediah's chute wouldn't deploy. And as you can see, it's not deploying now, even though I've armed it. So then I left the seat and it still wouldn't see. There's like a button that says disarm. So I clicking that and it didn't do anything. So I tried saying, like, oh my gosh, why is the parachute not deploying? I thought maybe we try and increase the altitude thing on the thing. It didn't work. So I tried just slowing down with the RCS pack. Because at this point I was like, oh my gosh, does the parachute not work? And this I'm going to have to end the video. Like, have to have Jebediah somehow miraculously survive. But at the last second, Hollywood couldn't have written a better script, could they? At the last second, Jebediah's parachute worked, and he's able to now parachute down safely to the ocean below. I guess, yeah, if this was real life, it wouldn't be all that reason to celebrate, right? Because he's going to have to sit there floating for however many hours it's going to take for recovery crews to reach him. But I guess Kerbals have got those giant bulbous heads. Maybe their helmet, there's enough air in that helmet to sort of act as a flotation device. We can just sit there T-posing and his helmet just keeps him afloat. Then his neck is like the fulcrum. So I don't know. But what I'm saying is he's fine. Look how happy he is. And besides, none of this even matters. I'll just time warp him down to the daytime. So there we are. Oh, very deep water just there. Luckily there's no sharks that we know of on Kerbin. But again, none of this mattered because now, of course, we're going to have to do a little rewind all the way back to when I made a quick save right before deployment of the Ion spacecraft. Because again, all of the Bob Kerbin, Bill Kerbin, Valentina, loads of Kerbals, we don't want them to die in this save file. This is still my Lowne Aerospace 3 save file, so I actually care about the future of our Kerbals. So now, we're going to go back in time. And this time we're going to deploy the Dawn spacecraft, knowing it's not going to reach orbit because it's got no pilot, because Jebediah Kerbin is very, very slowly and very, very clumsily attempting to disembark his command seat to board the crew cabin. And that crew cabin is part of the Mark II expansion mod. But it didn't really work. I did try and open the cargo bay doors and EVA across, but then he just overheated and exploded, and then another attempt, he just flew off and disappeared into the abyss. So I had to wait. I just time warped until we were above the atmospheric border. Then we can deploy our Ion spacecraft, deploy the solar panels just for show, but it's not going to go anywhere. And then we're going to go ahead and board the fuselage. And there we are. Straight away, we're nice and safe. And now we can just, close the cargo bay doors and fly this thing all the way back to the Kerbal Space Center, which gives us ample opportunity to admire the amazing update 5 of BlackRock's volumetric clouds, which is what's giving us these beautiful clouds and beautiful weather effects. But yeah, again, a bit like earlier when I was talking about nonsense during the Mun ascent, I feel like it's all fairly self-explanatory from this point. So what else could I talk about? I'm kind of having a bit of I'm making a lot of videos back to back to back, actually. So it's hard for me to remember what I have and haven't talked about because, so for context, 3 days ago I made my, oh gosh, I've forgotten completely what it even was. What did I even do for that video? It was the video I released on Saturday, was it the 18th? So yesterday, I released it yesterday, the 18th of October. I recorded this on the 19th of October, and I've completely forgotten how have I forgotten what? I remember what I had for dinner, which is a change. I had mac and cheese. And I'll tell you why I remember I had mac and cheese for dinner, right? I'm just checking my channel page. Oh yeah, it was Proximus Beta Dresmod Showcase. But I'll tell you why I remember I had mac and cheese, right? Is because mac and cheese, I really like mac and cheese. And it's not really like a British dish, it's like an American thing. We went to we were like on a drive and we swung by a motorway service station or something. And there was a Popeyes there. And I'm like, I'm going to try mac and cheese. Because it's not really something that I've ever really had. And I really liked mac and cheese. I'm like, I'm going to try and make this at home. So obviously I asked ChatGPT how to make mac and cheese. And basically you got to melt butter and heat up milk and whisk in cheese into the milk and the butter and pour it into the pasta. It's all this thing. So lots of pans with lots of gross things in them if they go off. So pans that was full of melted cheese and butter and lard and milk, and those pasta pans and stuff. So all kind of, obviously you clean them and it's fine. But, well, this is the story. So I made my mac and cheese, and let me just tell you, I smashed it. It was beautiful. It was a beautiful meal. It was delicious. Mwah. But then I put all my dirty, milky, cheesy, buttery pans, they kind of had loads of stuff stuck to them, put them in my dishwasher, right? Along with the mac and cheese bowls. There was more than one bowl I was cooking for myself and also my partner. And things like, glasses and all this, and the little strainer that you used to drain the pasta water from the macaroni. So yeah, all of that was put in the dishwasher. I then pressed start the dishwasher, and then I went to bed. Come down the next morning, I opened the dishwasher, and there's just this pool of rancid water in like the basin of the dishwasher, and none of the dishes are clean. They're still covered in like disgusting mac and cheese stuff, and that stinks. And it's also really warm. So I just get this blast of like warm, rancid milk and cheese and butter. And I was like, oh my gosh, what's happened? So I'm like, oh, the filter must be blocked. So I spent a good amount of time hand emptying the dishwasher with like an old glass, emptying it into a bucket. It was awful. Cleaned out the filter. The filter was all fine. And then I tried cleaning out the pipes. That was all fine. The spray arms were all fine. I'm like, oh, maybe the dishwasher just, I don't know, there was some error. Like we had the fuse tripped or something. I don't know. So I ran it again, come down, another new pool of rancid water. And it's boiling hot at this point. It stank. All the pans were not clean, and now they've been superheated. So it was really, it was absolutely awful. So I've said, right, this is now beyond my pay grade. So we've got a person coming in tomorrow to fix it, and so hopefully that gets fixed. But that's why I remembered what I had for dinner, because today my day has been spent just emptying rancid dishwasher water and trying to fix it. It didn't work, and it was a nightmare. So anyway, I mentioned this. I was talking, and I realized now the video is ending. Thank you, by the way, if your name is on the right, my patrons and YouTube channel members. Gotta be quick now, wrapping this up. Yeah. So today I made this video. Yesterday I made my upcoming Halloween special, which is not out yet, but that's been made now. And then I made my video going to Proximus Beta Dress, and that's So that's it.